Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Orbital in Conversation with. I'm Olivia, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the Orbital magazine.
I'm Beth, I'm the deputy editor-in-chief of the Orbital, and today we're joined by...
I'm Chloé Williams. I'm a writer from New York.
So I think we should probably begin by saying how we got here and, how we've now gone overseas in our second episode, which I think is pretty impressive. So I had been following Chloé for a while back a couple of years ago, and I've always liked her work and kind of kept updated on what she's been up to. And so in my first year of university, I'd actually gone to an Orbital dinner where I'd met a lot of new people, and kind of it was the first time I'd done something with Orbital. And I think we'd had a bit to drink, I got very inspired. I was talking to other writers. And I got back to my accommodation room, and I kind of drunk emailed, maybe not really, Chloé, and I said, I've read this book that you recommended, and I'd love to kind of make an article about it and interview in the same way. So she said yes magically, and so we conducted an article that was similar to the interviews in the book by Natasha Lunn, which is Conversations on Love. And then fast forward to this summer, we went to New York, and anyone who watched the last episode would know that.
Yeah, they'll know all about it.
I talked about it a lot. But I was in New York, and I contacted Chloé and got to meet her, which was lovely. And so now you're stuck with us again. And when you
My favorite.
So yeah, I think let's get started.
Yeah, let's go. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us. And we would love to hear a little bit to start off about yourself and your career. So first question is, what led you to writing? Quite a broad one. But yeah.
It's such a difficult question to answer. It really isn't, but it's one of those things where I sometimes feel like I should say that I have been writing forever, or that was something I always wanted to do, but I really did not know I wanted to write until I was pretty late into high school. I think it was when I was applying for college. Before that point, I had always been writing. I just never took it as something that I would do. I would be the Common Core in America, you'd have National Poetry Month and National Poetry Day, and you'd maybe get a week out of the school year, where you would learn about poetry. And I always really liked it, and I was always really good at English, but I never, for some reason, made the connection of I could be a writer when I grew up. And then one day I was on the way home with my mom, and I was taking every writing course possible, and I was like, what will I do when I graduate? I don't know. And she's like, oh, I always wished you'd be a writer. And it kind of clicked. I was like, you know what? That's right. That is what I've been trying to do, and I just didn't even know I was trying to do it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of this idea that almost you can't be a writer. I think people say, oh, you can, enjoy reading, or you can enjoy writing, but, everyone says, oh, you can be this or you can be that, but no one ever goes, you can be a writer, it's fine. So I think it's nice to hear stories of people actually pursuing what they're interested in and what they enjoy doing. So
yeah, I think I also felt like I couldn't be a writer because even though I was good at English, I was so horrendous at grammar, so bad. Every essay I got would be this would be a good essay if you were good at grammar. I would just be wow. So that also I was well, I can't be a writer, I'm not good at grammar.
We were literally, before we started this interview, we were just checking over one of our print issue things. We were sitting there thinking, how many editors does it take to spell properly?
We were struggling.
It's not good.
It's hard.
It's hard.
It is. But yeah, it's also really interesting to hear you say about the fact that even though you have written for a long time, it wasn't necessarily just not from birth, obviously, but from a super young age. Because I think, again, there's this kind of thing attached to quite a lot of careers where well, if you haven't been doing it since you were 8, then don't bother. But actually that's not true. I think a lot of people kind of figure out as they get older. So yeah, that's really nice and interesting to hear, I think. The next question kind of off the back of that is there anyone in particular who kind of inspired you? Not necessarily an author, obviously it can be, but is there anyone, for example, you're saying about that conversation with your mum, just in general, that kind of inspired you to really start writing?
It's really interesting. I my whole family is pretty creative. My brother, so part of, I think, kind of going off of what you were just saying was, my brother and sister are also both artists. My sister's a photographer, and my brother is, he does cartoonist. He's a cartoonist, and he does like lettering. I don't know what the actual terminology for that would be, but and my brother growing up, like he was like 7 years old, and like just so amazing at drawing, and like just always was doing it. It was always his thing. He found his niche very young. And so when I think about, like, I never like occurred to me, especially when it comes to art, like there's this sense of like you have to be doing it for so long. So there's an inspiring aspect to me of my siblings, because we're all very collaborative with one another. Like if one of us, like at one point my brother made stickers, and then a couple months later my sister made stickers, and then I made stickers. So they're very inspiring for me. I feel like they're the first artists that I ever really looked up to. They're very like in it, and they're very sure. And I think sometimes it's a very interesting to like have my medium, which is words, and then their medium, which is very visual. So they connect in a certain way, and I always feel kind of like the third wheel on that. I'm like, I want to be like you guys. But it's really inspiring to watch them like really make something physical, whereas my stuff kind of exists in the mind a little bit. Sometimes it's not always physical. But besides that, I really loved reading as a kid. I went to a school that took kids from all over instead of just like my hometown. So I didn't know anybody in my hometown. So I spent a lot of time reading, and I always like did really well in the reading tests. And I really loved, like growing up, I really loved Lemony Snicket. I think that was the first, I think he still really influences my writing. And also the Phantom's Tollbooth. Those are two like that I still see how they're like affecting me. Because they play with language in such a way that is so fun, and the narration is very fun. It's like sense of like breaking rules, but also doing it really well and having these really profound moments. And I think honestly, like reading a kid's book as an adult is like also just as moving. So they're very impactful on my journey as a writer.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of would have said, is this the path you saw yourself taking? But I feel like you've kind of touched on it now. You skipped a question. So something that some people who will know, Chloe, that you do is your newspaper. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that started?
So when COVID kind of like came around and was at its peak and everything was shutting down, like I think there was definitely other writers might be able to relate to this as well. You guys might be able to relate to this. There was a feeling of like you're watching these, I don't want to say legacy, but these well-known institutions shut down because they couldn't sustain themselves after COVID. And the publishing world itself is kind of fraught. Like, I mean, I remember when Penguin Random House was Penguin and Random House, like stuff like that. Like there's this feeling of like shrinking in the publishing world. And I felt it very acutely when I was graduating college, or like right before, because I was a senior in 2021. And so there was this publication in New York that I really loved. And I won't say what it is because it kind of had some controversial things come out about it after it shut down. But I always wanted to work there before I knew that it was like really bad. And I remember that like when I found out that it shut down, it was like a semester before I graduated. And I felt like I just don't know what I'm gonna do. But I started to think like, you know, this is a semester before I graduate. I'm not even taking creative writing courses. I've finished that aspect of my degree. I'm really just doing journalism at the moment. So realistically, whether I get my degree in like June or now, I have a skill set that would take to be a creative writer with like a creative writing degree. So I kind of just thought, you know, what am I like waiting for? And like there was this feeling of like no one, like I really realized like the fallacy that like I thought that someone was going to pull me out of like a sea of applicants and was going to be like, well, you are now a writer. But I was kind of realizing like that illusion was broken, and I already was one. I just had to write, like I just had to do it. So I was someone who was very like, I could get really excited and crash and burn very quickly. So I took a lot of time when it came to my newsletter of like saying, you know, I'm really going to take this seriously and I'm really going to be like adult about this and be self-aware. I really want to take some time to throw together this newsletter and really like make it sustainable for my own life. So I sat with it for a month, and I saw that writers that I really admired, like Haley Nahman or Cheryl Strayed, they were starting Substacks, and I thought, well, let me look at what this is. And I think the thing I like about Substack and newsletters is that's something where you're going to the audience, not them coming to you, which I think that can be the hardest part as a writer, is like, how do you get people to come back? Blogs are like that. Like, who's going to check over blog every day, like to make sure to see that I posted, whereas a newsletter is sitting in your inbox waiting for you. And those email notifications can be very annoying if you don't open them. So I was like, well, I'll just do a newsletter. And I kind of said, you know, I'm going to give myself permission to fail at this, but I'm really going to try. And I end up still doing it 3 years later.
Oh, well done. Well done. It's good. It's a good idea. I feel like, you know, to get, like you said, to get people interested in kind of coming back, it's got to be something that is similar to a newspaper rather than maybe a blog or something like that. So I think maybe we should start a newsletter.
Maybe we should. I really loved what you said also about that idea of kind of like sitting on it for a bit before really going into it, because when you said about being someone who can get very excited about something and go all in and then kind of crash and burn, I don't think I've ever related to a sentence more in my life. Yeah, I definitely felt that, but I think your whole approach to that obviously paid off, so yeah, well done.
So it's always good to know who you are, and then I think also to like remove that exterior pressure and like internal pressure of my first newsletter was like, guys, I literally said, I was like, I'm giving myself, for like the whole first original theme was about change, and I said, I'm giving myself permission to change. Like, that's the thing. And I think one thing as an artist is there's a real learning curve in doing. Like, you can learn and learn and learn, but you learn so much by doing. And the newsletter was like that, like figuring out like what's the schedule and what works for me. And and my life has been changing. I mean, I was 23 when I made it. So like from here and now, my life is so completely different. To go from a college student to like a real life person in the world, you have to like allow there to be like a flexibility with it. And I think that was definitely the moment where I started to really look at my life and how it functions, and to not like conform to like the idea that I had about how it was supposed to go.
So next question is kind of delving a little bit deeper. So obviously something that really attracted myself to your work was the kind of vulnerability and, you know, how much you put of yourself perhaps into your work. And I think I've always struggled with that personally. I've only recently tried to kind of put a bit more of myself into my writing, because I think, you know, it attracts readers. And how did you kind of get into that? How did you break into it, for example?
It's funny. I think I kind of used my imposter syndrome to my advantage a little bit, because like I'll get the notification on my phone, or like the email. It's like, oh, here's how your newsletter's going. Like this post this month got this many views. Like, to me, like it is shocking when I discover that someone read. Like, I get that, like the number. It's like, this has been opened 5,000 times or something. And I'm like, okay, like whatever that means. And then someone will be like, I really like the part where you said, and I'm like, you read it? Like, that is like, so there's something, I think it's not even necessarily like a bravery thing where I'm like, I'm going to be brave and share myself with people. It's just, I'm not really writing because I think people are reading. And I think that the being vulnerable aspect as a writer is hard, but I think there's definitely a sense of figuring out like the boundaries of like, what are you comfortable sharing? And I think that takes like a lot of time and practice. It's like, I've been sharing my writing since I was in high school. So I have 10 years of sharing writing and figuring out, you know, what am I comfortable with people knowing about me, and what do I want to keep for myself? And I think in college too, and the practice of like having to write like memoir and, you know, bring it into these like 12 people you met like at the beginning of the semester who literally know nothing about you, and to then share your inner thoughts and monologues with them. It's kind of like, you know, you just have to jump in at the same time. You have to like, I think the risk reward is not as high as people think. When I think, especially when I share my work, I mean, so many people are so grateful to get to experience feeling closer to another human being, that doesn't even matter if you do it well, it's the fact that you did it at all. And I know that I think there's just a sense of, to me, that there's so many people in the world who feel so lonely and feel like they're alienated in their experiences. And I know that when I read a book or anything really where I relate to what someone is saying, like it's such a has such an effect that it feels to me like, regardless of, again, like there's been books that I read that were like actually horrendous. Like I would be embarrassed to tell people I read them, but they have these moments where they've put like voice into something that I've felt, and it's so you feel so grateful that someone was brave enough to do it. And that in itself, like it feeds like some kind of cycle in me where I'm like, if I felt that way, then I want to give back and I want to connect with people, since I know that I get lonely and I feel brave enough to share this aspect of me, then I'm going to.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Absolutely.
I think, again, it brings people back, and if people feel something reading something like that, they're going to come back for it, and it, you know, inspired you, it's going to inspire many other people. And, you know, I'm trying to do things like that, and I think it's scary, and a lot of the time people don't want to do it because you don't want to be vulnerable, and you know, people reading your own thoughts and words, it's scary, it's not nice, but it's good, like you said, it's like having that comfort of knowing that if you felt it, other people would feel it too.
Yeah, I think too, people are nicer than we expect them to be. I know like the internet makes it seem like people are really mean, but most people will really like meet you where you're at and be really nice. So
Yeah, definitely. So the next thing is something we were really excited to talk about. So for anyone watching that doesn't know already, Chloe is currently in the process of writing her own book, which is incredible. So we'd love to hear a little bit about that, if that's okay. And how are you finding the journey? How's it going?
Of course, I'm really excited. I'm kind of at the, I don't want to say tail end of the process, because, you know, some wrenches are probably going to be thrown in there.
It's a little comfy after that.
But I'm like at the point of like the final stretch of like making something from nothing. I have like, I'm pretty close to my word count goal. And it's been quite an interesting process, I think. Well, so when I was 23, yeah, or it was January of 2022, I think. Yes. I got an email from my editor, Kyla, and she was like asking if we could meet up, and she had a magazine, and I assumed it was she wanted me to write something for her magazine. I've been getting a lot of emails like that, so I was like, yeah, sure. And she totally surprised me. She was like, we were wondering if you would be interested in writing a book with me and her partner. And I was like, absolutely, because I think they just seem really honed in on creativity, and they pick people that they're really fascinated by their stories, and they really want to like, they're just like really in on their mission, I guess. So I was like, absolutely, I'll do that. And we have been corresponding from that point on. And the process was really rough, I will say, that first year, because a couple days later I got I got let go from the job that I'd had since I was 20, and it was with a family that I nannied for, and it was just one of those like financial things. And I had started working for a family that was like really not, I don't want to say terrible, because like they weren't bad, but it was a really, really shitty, I don't know if I can say that, really crappy job. I'm like, for all the kids watching.
I don't think any kids will be watching. You're fine.
That's my nanny brain. But I ended up taking this job, and it was really soul sucking, you could say. It was just like you know, there's understanding between me and them that I was their employee and I had been working for people who I was kind of like their friend and family. So that was, I mean, that's, you know, it was rough. And so that first year that I had the deal, I didn't write anything really. I would write for Instagram, but I really couldn't muster up much more than that. And I was really struggling. And like the end of the year comes and you feel like such a failure. Like I was like coming up on a year and I had thought, you know, by that point I would have like a substantial amount done. But it ended up working out for the best because I ended up getting a writers group. And some of these girls that I write with, they're just phenomenal writers. And we meet every other week and we share our pages with each other. And I think really I needed that year to kind of figure stuff out and to plan out the book. So it worked out in my favor. But yeah, the book is, the process of writing it is well, I think it's one of those things where I've said it before where I feel like it's kind of like if you were people get like afraid to start. I think that's like a big thing. Like people want to have plans set in place and they want to know where they're going. And I admire that. And I think that is something that is definitely, you know, you don't want to go in completely blind. But I think there's also this great passage in the book Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, where she says some other quote that she's quoting someone else, but I'm going to say it's Anne Lamott. But she says, when you're driving at night, you can only see as far as your headlights, but you can get the whole way home that way. And that's kind of how I feel about writing. I'm not a big plotter and planner. And I think when I went into the process, I really didn't know, it was a trust the process kind of thing. And Kyla has been really supportive and super great about that because and also my writers group, I send them the most like unhinged chapters where I'm like, okay, the middle's not there, but I have the first part and the last part. Like that's like constant, like they're like Frankenstein chapters. So the process has been a lot of like, let's, you know, move with like a kind of intuitive process, not so much here, I know exactly what I want to do and I'm going to do it, which has been, it's surprising because you hear a lot about outlines and stuff. But I think, you know, every writer is different. Sometimes I write like really short bursts that are like really inspiring. And then sometimes I'm writing like 1,000, 2,000 words. So I think it's one of those things you just have to kind of like go with it. And again, kind of similar to the newsletters, you have to give yourself that process of the learning curve of figuring out how you work best. And I don't know, I feel like there was a lot of questions in there that I didn't answer.
Well, I think we've answered most of it, but could you tell us a little bit about the content and the themes?
It's a secret. No. The theme of the book is about healing. And I know that I read the book in the Dream House. And then I also read it like around the same time, the book Little Weirds. And then much later I read the Book of Delights by Ross Gay. And those really like were the foundational ideas for what I wanted to do. I think I found it difficult to sit down and write, well, here's point A and here's point B, and we're going to just go through it chronologically and talking about this. Or we're going to have these really long chapters where you're seeing my everyday in between stuff. And I really like mundane life. I feel like that's definitely something I've made people know. But I didn't feel like I wanted to do that. Like I didn't want to have a book that is just going through like my like woe is me moment. And I think it is also the story itself is about healing. And everybody always says, you know, healing's not linear. And I kind of wanted to play with that a little bit. I didn't feel like the story I wanted to tell didn't make sense in chronologically. I mean, I was definitely confused when it was happening. So I was like, let's do something a little different. And so I began to plot out the points of my memoir, or what it's like creative nonfiction. I'm not even sure what I would call it, genre bending. I began to plot the points of when I felt like healed or like moments of healing, and then moments where it's like you're kind of reverting back to bad behavior a little bit. So I like made an arc of it's about me meeting this guy and this weird feeling of like, oh, he's different from my last boyfriend. And that's really all I'm looking for. So there was like a real like healing arc for that. And then the immediate aftermath of like, but this guy, you have tunnel vision. This guy is actually making you worse. And so it kind of plots like a real like healing point of like going up and then like the down and then the real true healing moment that happens. I described it as it's how your 20s heal and harm you. So I think it's one of those things where, learning about, I was boy crazy from the moment I was born. So going from being boy crazy to then really falling in love with my friends and being really content with my life and who I am and like becoming confident in myself and being okay with being by myself and being alone. And also kind of like mourning that period of my life that I was really not good. And I was kind of throwing a band-aid over a bullet wound a little bit and trying to heal it with and letting people do whatever they wanted to you. So yeah, the book is this creative. It has like moments of that are like, I don't know, conceptually fictionalized. It's like I have the first chapter is about what I think happens at the edge of the universe. But they all play into this different, like I felt like it was difficult. I was inspired by In the Dream House because there was points that I felt were difficult to write about. But if I zoomed out and made them abstract or fictional, or if I like tried to write about them in a more I'm not sure what the word would be, but like almost like a more potent way where I'm exaggerating everything, then I felt more capable of doing it. So all those like fragmented pieces come together and they're playing on chapters that have real narrative to them, and it hopefully will come together to be a book. I don't know if some people will call it that, but I definitely will.
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too.
I think it'll be good. I think I also keep meaning to read. Is it In the Dream House?
Yes,
I mentioned it before, and I keep meaning to read it. But I keep forgetting. So
it is phenomenal. I can't. I mean, like it's so good. That's all I can even say. Like I'm speechless. It's like one of those things. Like I would never deign to say that I am writing a book that's like In the Dream House. I'm like, what? That started an idea. I'm not gonna say it's like it, but it definitely got the gears turning.
Okay, I'm gonna have to. I will do that. We'll sort that out.
I'll definitely put it on.
It'll be
my
like a
list as
preview
well.
before we get to your book.
Yes.
So with the book, how are you finding kind of balancing it, working alongside, work and life and all the other things that come in between?
It's hard. It's definitely hard. There's like how I said, I spent a year not writing it. Integral to the process, you could say. I think really balance for me is like I am constantly shocked to learn that part of my writing process requires rest. I'm always like, this simply can't be true, but it is every time. I think it can be difficult. I mean, to go from, the newsletter and then the paid newsletter that I have, and then to also feel the kind of pull to want to post me on Instagram, but then also wanting to keep some stuff for the book. It can be very, very overwhelming to try to find the balance. But I think honestly, I feel that the biggest thing for me is that I'm okay when I don't do anything. Although I said I'm surprised to learn about rest, but like I really try to pay attention to the different points in my life. Like when I have a busy week where I'm nannying a lot, or if I have my newsletter, like to me, it's okay just to do what I have to do in that moment. And I have a lot of faith in myself, especially having done the newsletter for 3 years, like in seeing, because I think I had this idea when I first began the newsletter that I wasn't a committed, or I didn't have a good work ethic. But I mean, college is so different from real life. Like I remember my therapist was like, it is so different. And I was like, I don't think that's true. Like I was like, I know you don't get homework, but I mean, you still have to work. Then as it happens, not having 6 classes or 5 classes or whatever, I don't even know how many I had. I can't even remember at this point. Not having to do that and then like read like, I don't know, like 2 books a week is definitely takes the pressure off a little bit. So seeing that I actually do have work ethic, it's just I was tired, has helped a lot. And so when I don't do anything, I have a lot of faith in myself that I know that I'm not doing something now, but there will come a point where I'll sit down and I'll bang out like 2,000 words, or I'll do something with my writers group like that. I have both the forced obligation of doing it and also the points in which I'm allowed to be by myself and be with my thoughts, I guess. Yeah.
Very nice. Sounds like you're doing a good job. So that's something. We'll
Definitely.
see when it comes out. We'll see when it comes out.
Like I always say, it's like intuitive, but it's like really, truly, like you just have to like really get used to understanding when you're doing something that isn't good for you and how that feels.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, that's really important. Thank you. So kind of coming off of talking about like Instagram and the newsletter, would you be able to tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are on kind of the value or like pros and cons when it comes to social and digital media for writers now?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting like point to be at. I feel that I think the social media helps in the capacity of that so many people, because of social media, are really lonely and they feel alone. And I think you can really create a community as a writer when you have social media. I always say that like I love my little corner of the internet. Like I feel like it really reflects the values of like what I want and how I see life. And I feel like I've gathered people who are like-minded, not in an echo chamber way, but in a way that we're just spiritually aligned. But I think the con of it is there can be a lot of pressure, and especially as an artist in general, in the broad sense, online, I think it's very easy to get into a point of burnout. And I've talked about this with my siblings. I have definitely had moments where I felt so like just at my wit's end a little bit. But I think really the really nice part is, like I said before, like people are a lot nicer than we believe that they will be. And so it's nice to have a community, because when you say like, I'm really tired, I really can't do this, people are always saying you can come back when you're ready. And I think creating a community like that and people who are just so eager to read and to connect with someone and to be able to like DM them and feel like you're kind of in this bubble. Like I don't ever really feel like I'm on the internet. So I always speak like, well, the internet's actually a super nice place. And then I'm like, well, that might just be the internet that you're on, maybe not everywhere else. I think that aspect of community and the people you meet, I mean, that's how I got my writers group. I was posting online and they wanted a writer to do a writers group, and now that's how that happened. So it's I think really like at the end of the day, community is like a really important aspect.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think there's two sides. There's the side of, okay, now with the internet, it feels like you can't switch off, or you feel like you have to, people are expecting things. But also, like you said, if these people do understand, if they are nice people, which most of them can be, they do understand, and they want, they want to read your work, so they want you to be in the right mindset to produce that work. So I think there's two sides, but I think there's always good sides to the internet, even if everyone thinks there isn't.
Yeah. Definitely.
So this is a very big question. What advice would you give to young writers, whether they're into creative writing or journalism? What would you say?
I think a really important thing, I know that the internet, I was just speaking of internet, there's, I think, this trend going on where young writers will post their work and people will really dog on them. They'll really like, the internet is like a dog pile constantly. And I think it's important for writers like to know that those like Urban Outfitters table, coffee table books that like are poetry that are being sold, I 100% wrote poems like that. Like that, like you have to start somewhere. And I think it's really, I really admire the poets of today, the young poets, because they're so brave. Like it is scary to post your stuff online. It is scary to be like witnessed in that way. And the fact that that people can dogpile on you and really like shit on you for being a novice is scary. But I really think that it's so hard to want to be okay with being a novice, but you really should be. You should really take your time to like learn a craft. And if you're going to, I would recommend reading what you write. I know people say that all the time, but it's true. You have to read what you write. And I don't mean those Urban Outfitters coffee table books. I mean, like, really, dive into the niche a little bit. And but a big thing is, again, you learn the most by doing, and sharing your writing is really fun, but you can also just do it for yourself. So really, I guess my advice in clearer terms is just do it.
Yeah, I think it's true, especially with the whole, what you said about finding your niche. I think once I kind of found what I liked it to read, I was like, oh, I want to write that straight away.
Yeah.
And I think it comes to you really quickly. You might spend a lot of time looking around for the right thing, and I think when you find it, it suddenly clicks, which is great for writers.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
Yeah, totally agree. So we are starting to run out of time. But the last thing we like to ask everybody I say everybody, we will be asking. Yeah, you're the second person we will be asking.
Yes, all of the people
of all of the people we've got lined up, is for a book recommendation.
Okay, so obviously I am kind of indecisive. But I would say I'm gonna give like my quick terms with them. If you're in your 20s, or you're starting your 20s, early 20s, what have you, you should read Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. That changed my life. But I would also recommend, if you like fiction, to read My Brilliant Friend. That's really good. And then if you like nonfiction, you should read In Dream House. Or there's another book I had, I wish I could remember it. But I also really like Ross Gay's Book of Delights. That's a really good one if you're like a poet. And then I also, for fiction, really like Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng.
Amazing.
I was going to say, this would be a great time for you to like whip out a copy of your book and go.
I know.
It's such a good marketing technique.
I won't say the title because it's pretty good, so I don't want anyone to steal it.
No spoilers. No spoilers. Okay. Oh my God, we've got 3 minutes, so we really have come
to wrap it up.
We'll wrap up quick.
Buzzer beater.
Exactly. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for talking to us, and saying yes again.
Every time, always.
But we hope you enjoyed, and we will see you soon. We will see everyone who has made it to the end soon, and for another episode that should be hopefully next week.
Yes. Thank you so much. It was so great to hear from you.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Oh, it's another week of me not knowing how to stop.